Today, on a spectrum of lost traditions, we'll search the sea bottom Hawaiian style. We'll discover the crackling energy that shapes neon signs and the patient skill that lies behind prize-winning handmade kites. Neon tubes are known by the signs in which they appear. The shapes of these signs are faithfully rendered by the practiced hand of Bozo Shigebura. Kites are known by their flight through the skies. Spectrum finds that these cheerfully decorated toys are the creation of veteran kite maker Richard Ching. But first, Spectrum learns why the traditional Hawaiian method of octopus hunting is called squid eye. Here to begin our journey into Hawaii's lost traditions is newspaper columnist Mike Markridge.
The Hawaiian word for octopus is hei, but usually it is called squid. It has been an important part of the diet of many people in Hawaii for hundreds of years. The fishermen who know how to find it are said to have squid eye. Mrs. Julia Inoka of Waimanalo remembers.
How old was I?
Yeah.
Ever since I remember, I was a little girl. My mother's brother, he was a fisherman, and he went out squidding. He had the eye for squid. Not everybody is able to see squid in the, in their holes. So the person who fish must have a good eye to see, can tell how the fish, how the squid looks like in their holes. Sometimes just the head part is sticking out of the hole. Sometimes it's the leg portion with all the suckers sticking outside of the hole. And that person's eye must be used to just how it looks in that hole and in the water amongst the seaweed, floating around. And that's what you say when a person has a good squid eye. He can see squid and he can catch them, spear them.
Not everybody has it, though.
Not everybody.
Squid fishermen rise early for the low tide. They look carefully for signs the octopus has left on the sand, a bit of shell or rock arranged in the special way that marks a squid hole. Mr. John Miner, a longtime Waimanalo fisherman, explains.
Well, when you go out, there's certain way down the bottom of the ocean there, the way the squid, he keeps it.
Yeah.
Well, every rock you see, he turns it over. See? And from there, he goes hiding. Then he covers himself up. That's why people pass by, they don't see him. But if you see the ground, you look at the ground, it's something there. The old days, they used to get the coconuts, We go with a coconut, and we chew it up. And what we do, we spit it in the water, and the water gets clear, then you can see what you want down the bottom.
Back in the old days, the fishermen all taught their children, how to fish, how to squid, because it was very important for their livelihood. That was their means to get food for their family. And as they grew older, they would have to support their family. And they were not taught at a very early age how to plant taro, how to pound poi, how to go to fish, how to look for squid. They just weren't able to care for their family. So the fishermen taught their children a lot of things about fishing. Kanelo was their god of the squid. They prayed to him to tell him to take care of them when they got in the water and to make their fishing, their squidding, profitable that day. They go out and they come back with something. You leave it on that shrine. If you have a shrine there, you leave it on that shrine. You leave it there for the gods. And in some way, in the old days, somewhere, the spirits come and take that away. The Hawaiians believed in it. The spirits come and take that for themselves to feed themselves, because that was Hawaiian witchcraft. Actually, the old Hawaiians, way back in the old days, they also used squid for healing sickness. This is part of sorcery.
Oh, yeah?
Hawaiian witchcraft, which is kahuna that does that, all that work. When a person is sick, they went out to the deepest part. It's not any kind of squid they caught, but they went out into the deep part where the kahuna would let down his lure, which is the kauri, you know, that with the hook underneath, down to the bottom of the ocean. This particular squid that they're looking for must be outside of his hole, laying flat on the ocean floor with all its arms. The arms is what they call in Hawaiian the avi, the arms sticking out onto the sand, and he will lower that down to pick up that squid, and the squid will cling on that. That's the one they will bring back, and they would treat the sick person with it. However they used it, I don't know. Maybe they placed it against that person's body for some reason. I don't know how they do it, but they used it for that purpose, for treating the sick people. And the kahuna has a lot to do, because he is chanting away in his chants, you know. Oh, he will pray to Kaneloa, who is the god of the squid. And actually the word squid, the Hawaiian squid is he'e. When we talk about squid is the Hawaiians who call muhe'e, which is one with a long head and the shorter legs. You know what kind they are? Like the California squid.
Yeah.
The long head and the short legs, they are called squid. But the island squid, the Hawaiians call them just he'e, you know, which is supposed to be octopus.
While the previous octopus was photographed in a tank at Sea Life Park, this one was photographed at a depth of 1,200 feet off the Puna Banks by Professor McMurtry in a submarine Makali'i. Mr. Miner described how octopus lures are used.
Some people, they put a bait on this hook here. Some crab, you know, any crab or fish, whatever they do, they put it on here and slip it down, you know, they tie it up a little.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then from there, they get a line, they tie it over here. It's got to be an 80 or 100-pound test line. This is what he wants, the shell.
He doesn't care about the crab.
Well, he doesn't care about it. If the crab is there, he goes for the crab first. Because he knows this don't move very much, see? Very slow, but a crab does. So he gets that first. And when he gets that, that's when he gets caught. Because he put one leg on it, then he put the next leg on it, and then continue on until he sets right on it. See, when he sets right on it, you just, you can tell because, you know, one of the legs are holding a rock. Then he starts stretch of the line, then we know it's on there. But the Hawaiians usually have the bone hooks. See, they're stronger than this one.
Bone hook is stronger than steel, huh?
Right. But
Yeah.
the steel, sometimes the squeeze bends it. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But the squid, the octopus, it doesn't bend the...
Well, when you pull it up, see?
Yeah?
Yeah, it won't bend it.
Octopus won't bend the bone, huh?
No, they won't bend the bone. But they know what it is.
But if you were telling me if you leave it down too long, the octopus will smash the cowrie shell?
Yeah, he will. But you won't leave it long because, you know the feel of the way they pull, you know,
Yeah.
and you pull it up. See? Because you want the squid yourself, and the squid wants this.
Yeah. Once an octopus is caught, it is carefully cleaned, like this one by Alohialani and her father, Harold Ahuna. Mrs. Inoka explains.
I just cut the, you know, where the open part is, and take out the sac, the ink sac in there. I know that with the big kind of squid that they catch, the big kind of he'e, we usually strip the legs, strip all that outer skin off, because it comes much more tender, and then you don't have to see the tentacles when you eat it.
Yeah.
So we strip them off. But the young ones, you don't need to do that.
So you clean out the ink sac, and then
a pound of it salt.
you pound the whole
until
thing
the-
with salt.
Yes, until you hang on to the neck of the head, and then you just pound it until the arms begin to curl up, and then it's ready, it's soft. It truly is a delicacy for the Hawaiians. They love it. And you can boil it and eat it too. You will have to acquire a taste for it. Not everybody does love it. Hawaiians and local people, yes.
For hundreds of years, the knowledge of how to survive from the sea is passed from one generation to the next. The tides change, the beach shifts, and the stones move, but the reef is still here, and so are the Ohunas. And so long as there are octopus to be found, there will be fishermen who seek them, and the successful ones will have the eye.
Coming up, Chinese kites fly high in the Hawaiian skies. But now Spectrum travels to the neon-lit streets of Honolulu. It is here where the seasoned technique of Bozo Shigemura sheds its light.
Neon, a flash in the night, pointing the way where to go, where to eat, where to shop. Neon, so common that its presence can be taken for granted. It was in the 1920s when neon first lit up the streets of Honolulu. And among the first here to learn the new trade of sign making was Robert Shigemura.
I was an apprentice. I didn't do much of a job, but I watch him, so I pick it up so that I don't have no master really. I can do all by myself. You see, I gotta work hard.
He is a quiet man who works by himself at the Neon Electric Service Company in Kalihi. Although he's in his 70s, he still handcrafts signs for those stores and even individuals who want to see their names in lights. Robert Shigemura is simply known to his friends and customers as Bozo.
When I was a young boy, I went to work for an electrical company. So, for about a year, working people call me. They put me some nickname on me, so they call me Bozo. Every place I go, during the war, I work. This man know me, he call me Bozo. So next person hear that name, he call me Bozo. So keep going.
Bozo's signs begin with Robert Green, the company's designer, who first draws the sign to scale on paper. This is then transferred to asbestos sheeting, which Bozo uses as a heat-resistant pattern to shape the bends and curves of the lettering. He works quickly, marking with chalk the place where a bend is to be made. Then he heats the straight tube carefully to prevent cracking and deftly manipulates the heated glass to conform with the sign's pattern. Plugging one end of the tube, Bozo gently blows air through a rubber hose into the other end to prevent the heated tube from collapsing before it has cooled. Once the tube has been shaped and is cooled, Bozo inserts electrodes at both ends and tests it with thousands of volts crackling from end to end. Now the sign is ready to be filled with the neon gas that will give it life. Different glazes baked on the inside of the tubes create the spectrum of greens, oranges, whites, dark blues, and yellows. Bozo uses transparent tubing when he wants the natural scarlet color of neon gas and the light blue color of argon gas. His career has been affected by blackouts during the war, and then again by recent ordinances preventing the construction of large outdoor signs.
And my job is off and on because they don't have big demand on that neon sign. But back in 1930, 32, was so busy. A lot of neon sign, big sign. All the sign I made a couple of years ago was Princess, Hawaii, Kaimiki, Kapahulu, Yautier, Kilo Theater, so forth. So many, I cannot remember.
Not only have many theaters carried neon signs by Bozo, but restaurants, bars, shops, and even a whole district.
Hotel Street, you know, Buffet. It's a famous restaurant, you know. Hub, Benson Smith, you know, all those signs. You don't see any more already.
The old tradition of handmade kites was brought to Hawaii from China by Mr. Richard Ching. Many years ago, Richard Ching learned how to make painted kites. Through application and skill, he advanced to a degree of technique which created kites that soared higher and stayed up longer than most others. Let's see how he does it.
Well, I make kite because I love to look at flying objects, and it's a challenge that how good can I make? And I have a lot of fun. I like flying objects. A Chinese kite, the bow kite, is a kite made from a square piece of paper. Be sure that the paper is really square. Then you have two pieces of bamboo. And then when you make your bow, the bow is placed this way, the perimeter this way here. Just the opposite way from the American bow. The American bow goes this way. The Chinese kite has more flexibility. By flexibility, I mean this. The wings, you shake it, it flaps. And when it flaps, when you pull the string, it flaps. It gradually goes up and up and up. Whereas the American kite, they have the dihydral this way here, nowhere else, just one way. So there's a little bit more advantage in this bamboo than this regular stick. Flexibility. To make a kite, you got to have bamboos. So I go up in the forest, bamboo forest, or wherever there's bamboo, then I select my bamboo. When I select my bamboo, the bamboo should have long knots. From here to here is all right, but not short kind of a knot. Then it all depends on the size of kite that I want. But for the size of a kite that I have now, and I got about an inch or inch and a quarter inch thick bamboo, bring it home, cut it up, and split it up in half, like this, after it's been dried. Then after that, I split it up in small sections like this. Then after that, I find the one that I want, then I start to work on my bow and the centerpiece by shaving it down. The next step I do, get the string here. What is knot? 1, 2, 3, 4 times. Turn, pull. Then I turn it over. Do the same thing, more or less, get an idea how big the bow is going to be. The next thing I do is to put the bow on the kite and see how does it look, see how does it work. Yeah, good enough. Then I have my contact cement. The contact cement, then I put a little bit on the bamboo, sufficient. I don't have to make it all over the paper. Take too much time and this and that. So we do it this way. In the old days, the regular paste cost too much money. So instead of using the regular paste, I used to use rice, flour, and sometimes poi. But there is one fault with it. At night time comes along, the cockroaches eat them up. So that's the problem. Just on the bamboo is sufficient. The others, they're not too sure. They put on the paper and all, but I just save some glue. And I paste it this way. Okay, and the next thing, the centerpiece. Stick it under here, stick it there, put it to the top. Then I use the same glue, put it on the top here, put some on the paper. Well, I have flown kite more than 60 years. Today I'm 71, so you can see one was 11. Probably I was about 9 when I started. But 11 years old, that's when my dad took me to China. And that is when the real challenge came in. Because when I seen the kite up in the air, it was hardly any wind. And I was so happy. I said, I got to make a kite something like that one. That kite can fly in very, very light wind where most kites won't fly. And so when I came back to Hawaii, I learned how to make all the different kites like this. And when I started to make my kites, I didn't even know how to paint. If I were to show you those that I made about 22 years ago, I would be ashamed to show them to you now, because they were lousy painting. But as we go along, then I start to improve. Well, to me, kite making is an art. Any Tom, Dick, and Harry can make a kite, but will it really fly? So I make a kite, and when I say it's an art, I mean to make a kite can fly in light wind, medium wind, and strong wind. Well, I fly kite because I have some kind of a sense of happiness. When I see the kite in the air, then I'm so happy. I see the kites flying in the air, and sometimes I see the birds fly around the kite. And sometimes the birds will even hit the kite string. It gives you that kind of feelings. Oh my, even the birds come to investigate, you know, and gives you a heck of a good feeling that you cannot even express it all.
Where I live, there are rainbows and flowers full of colors and birds filled with song. I can smile when it's raining and touch the warmth of the sun. I hear children laughing in this place that I love. And the laughter of morning and starry nights.
Now, from Hawaii Public Television's Mele Hawaii series, here is Charles K. L. Davis's tribute to Henry Berger, past master of the traditional Royal Hawaiian Band.
It was at these steamer concerts started by Berger that island visitors became so familiar with both the lilting and upbeat sounds of Hawaii. One song that is still often played is Hilo March, originally called Keala Tuberose. This song was written by Joseph Ai'a and later changed by Berger to become one of Hawaii's most popular island marches.
Traditions are lost only when they are never found again. As we survey the rich legacy of our heritage, we learn to conserve those traditions worth keeping and to build upon those traditions worth changing. Join us again on our next Spectrum.
Spectrum was funded in part by the Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and the Arts.
The following program has been funded in part by grants from the Hawaii State Foundation on Culture and the Arts,
To the north and east of Maui's Haleakala crater lies the district of Hana. Beautiful Hana is rich and fertile, bathed with sunlight, caressed by soft trade winds, and overflowing with pure mountain waters. This gentle land beckons the children to play. Blue, pristine, offshore waters yield a bounty of food. Cattle thrive upon the land, and the people of Hana never go hungry. The people of Hana live in a special harmony and capture a closeness that is rapidly disappearing in our modern world.
I think Hana is such a unique place to grow up. It was fortunate for me to be raised and brought up in this area. Although our surroundings were kind of isolated from, central Maui, Paia, Wailuku, Lahaina. But I think these surroundings, which is so unique and which is so important, not only for me, but also for my children that is growing up in here, in Hana. It is so important for us because we are isolated to live the way we live, which is very simple. We live off the land, we live off the ocean, we kind of help each other, we support each other, especially the families in Hana, the Ohanas. One of the greatest things to be raised in Hana is you are somehow related. Hana gathers its strength from the kupunas, from people that has been born and raised here. And they love the aina of Hana. I do too. I've been away for some time. I was glad to leave. I was happier to be back.
Centuries of invasion, combat, and conquest fill the history pages of this most desirable of places. Graveyard and birthplace to both royalty and commoner alike, the spirits of those who once made Hana their home echo from the distant past.
My name is Luukia Pilekai. First came to Hana in August the 31st, 1916. When we came, they had an old pier down there, and the boat had to park out, and then we come on a rowboat to the pier. We came to Hana because my husband was sent from Waluku to work for the county over here as a mechanic. We came with the first truck for the Hana district. Life has been good to me, and I enjoy staying in Hana.
There was a great physical disturbance, and I arrived on the scene at about 5 o'clock on the morning of July 25th, 1914. And when I was growing up in Hana, it was a beautiful paradise, and even while I thought it was the end of creation at the time, in later years I learned that this was the end of the rainbow.
My first introduction to Hana was in February of 1942 when I was assigned as district commander of the Maui County Police Department. A lot of things were happening out there during the war. The police department was the major agency in Hana. There was no military there for a while. And about 1943, a contingency of the U.S. Army did come into Hana. But prior to that, the police department was the whole show. My wife was a Hana girl. I always tease her by saying that I hired her as my secretary with malice aforethought. 6 months later, we were married. So Hana to me has been, as I say, a very, very special place. When I got out there in 1942, the sugar plantation was going full blast. And that was the major economic entity in the whole district of Hana, which extended all the way from Kailua to Kaupo. The district had about 3,000 population at that time, and now it's just a little bit more than 1,000. So almost all of the economic life revolved around the plantation. 90% of the jobs at that time were plantation related, either directly or indirectly. About 1944, the plantation closed down. It was no longer economic, and they were losing a lot of money. They were in the red. So the parent company, which was C. Brewer, decided to close down that plantation. And let me tell you, that was a very traumatic experience for the people of Hana, because the main job source just disappeared. What was fortunate for the district was that a multimillionaire by the name of Paul Fagan came on the scene, and he had been a stockholder of C. Brewer and Company, and he decided to buy the entire plantation, which he did in about 1944. So between 44 and 45, he developed that whole plantation into a first-class ranch.
My recollections of Hana are always of the ranch, being born and raised on it, Hana being Hana Ranch. Hana has always been cattle to me. It's always been a ranch way of life. It's always been a rural way of life. I hope it remains this way.
The last year on the ranch, we have been doing a lot of learning about the HRM, Holistic Resource Management process. And one of the parts of it is goal setting. And we have, about a year ago, we sat down with all the employees of the ranch and the owners and the managers of the other divisions of the Rosewood Company here. And we formulated some goals. We put down on paper our goals. These are goals that we would like to, how we would like to see Hana Ranch 50 years in the future. And it came out that all of us wanted Hana to remain the way it is. We want it to be rural, pastoral, landscape. We'd like the ranch to remain a ranch. We like the cowboy lifestyle, the hunting and the fishing. We don't want it to develop any more than it is now, with just the ranch and the hotel. And we'd like to see Hana Ranch be successful so that Hana can remain the way it is.
Well, you gotta have dogs in this mountain.
Dogs is the absolute necessity.
Too much brush.
No dogs, no pig. Well, you can sometimes. A miracle happens. You go up there and a pig is in the way, you know, or something. But normally you take dogs. Very, very few hunters over here go without dogs. You have to use dogs to find a pig. Most of the hunters here used the old surplus carbines, old World War II carbines, 30 calibers. And we use the soft point bullet. Because the military type bullet, which is the solid one, it'll go through a pig. I've seen it. And, well, Lawrence knows that thing go through and right through the dog's foot.
Mostly for food. Very few go for the sport and throw it away. It's to bring home and make use of it. If two people go, we divide it in half. Then we bring home, we give to our brothers and sisters, whoever can make use of it. See? They don't throw nothing away. Make sausage. Then you can make it in lau-lau, you know, with the tea leaf steam, and you can roast. But don't make stew out of mountain pig, because smell come out, see? Gotta be dry, everything.
Stay right here, right here. Right in here, Lonnie, right in here. Come on.
I came here about 10 years ago, and I had been coming to Hana for about 12 years, and it always just seemed such a beautiful, remote, special, spiritual kind of a place that I didn't realize it had gotten under my skin until I had been here a couple of years and I had been visiting Hana. And so I decided I would buy me a small parcel of land, about 5 acres, 6 acres, and I had heard that the Hana Ranch were selling some agricultural plots. So I came over one weekend to look at them, and for some reason or another I asked if they had something a little larger. And so they showed me some larger parcels, and so then just so happened that all 3 parcels that I liked were contiguous. They all joined, and so I ended up, instead of 5 acres, I got about 500. This is the beginning of some of our macadamia nut orchards, and we seem to have, right now is the blossoming time of the trees, and they have the beautiful blossoms, and they have a lovely smell. It's almost like an orange blossom, but not quite as heavy. And we're coming into some of our macadamia orchards here now. Oh. I wanted you to see this. This is kind of special. These are to me, some of the biggest banyans in probably the whole state here. There's about, you can sort of see the size of these things by my getting over here. Sort of insignificant in this great temple here. But interestingly enough, these banyan trees, there are about 7 of these in a row here, and they were all started. There used to be a railroad through here that carried the sugar cane, and they used the cross ties of the railroad was banyan wood, and this land is so rich that they rooted, and consequently you have these beautiful, majestic trees. It's a little bit like Swiss Family Robinson multiplied a few times. And, these are macadamia nut blossoms. I don't know whether this is interesting to your audience or not, but they're interesting to me. And then after the flower falls off, you'll have this little thing left here, and on each one of these forms a nut. They, of course, all don't live, because if they all lived, it would probably kill the tree because they get so heavy and big. But then after the nuts form, after the blossom is dropped, they start growing on little pieces. Can you see this? All right. These are little small macadamia nuts that have just started, and they have a husk on the outside, and then they have a shell on the inside, and then the nut. And then these will, when they get ready, they get big enough, then they'll fall to the ground, and we pick them up. And that's how we harvest our macadamia nuts here.
My idea of a vacation is coming home to KNI. I love this place. You can't help but love it. I never tire of it. It's like being in love and being happy that you found what you want and you've got it. You know, it's there for you. This is a place where one comes to find himself. Even if you've been in the city in Wailuku for the day, we always feel like you gotta get home. You gotta get back to the country, back to KNI. Because of the clean air, the mountains, the ocean, and the feeling of family is very prevalent here.
At Uncle Harry's, we try to do a lot of Hawaiian crafts, like the kupunas here, the elderly do lauhala making, and then we buy from them. You know, everybody try to be a winner. But this is a family operation, and also my dad do wood carvings, bowls, trays, and I do some of the sculptures. It's in the back of me. Tikis, woman faces, more on the sculptures. Like here, when it rains during the winter, we do a lot of carving, a lot of sculptures like that. Like if nice and sunny, we clean the yard or work in the taro fields like that. But mostly, in my condition, I love to carve, doing sculptures, milo, out of milo wood, out of core wood, few monkey pot, but more on the texture of the wood, the dark woods, milo and core.
Hana is a special place where when we perform or do the hula, it's because it is surrounded with such beauty, you know, and the people here being how they are. It's a joy to teach it. It's wonderful to perform, to dance it, because there is this special mana that we have here, that what comes from the land, comes from the people. And I really feel that the people here in Hana are blessed. I feel blessed being here. I'm sorry I can't talk about it without crying, because I feel strongly about Hana and its people. It's such a very special place, you know. And when I do the hula, when I teach it, I feel so proud. The hula has so much to say for our people, you know. It's an education for our youngsters, so that when they grow up, they will have some of their culture, hopefully a lot of it. Because at one time we were losing our culture, you know, but now it's coming back, thankfully. And I think when we are surrounded with such beauty, it brings out a lot of the good in us. Makes it easier to perform, you know, and a joy, makes it a joy. And I feel that the children, even the adults, just love doing it, you know, they enjoy it.
Churches along the Hana coast were built basically one day's ride apart from one another, and were probably originally grass shacks. There was a grass shack here at the base of Kauiki Hill here in Hana that preceded Wananalua Church here. And this church wasn't begun until 1842. It took 20 years to complete the construction of it. There were heavy populations, of course, out beyond Hana, out into Kaupo, and on around into Kanaio and Ulupalakua. But there was no connection. It took 10 days to ride from Hana to Kaupo on horseback or muleback in those days. Most of the commerce was by water, but there was very little communication between churches, and they became quite independent of one another at one time because there just was no way for people to communicate easily with one another out here. Then when sugar died along the coast, beginning in Kipahulu and working its way back up to Hana, in each little village that the sugar industry failed in, the people would all move out because there was no work. Little by little, the houses would disappear, but the churches would be the last thing to go because they would always try to protect the churches and the graveyards and try to keep them up as well as they could. And so a whole series of churches along the coast became sentinels of something that used to be that isn't here anymore. And there's a group of us that have been working over the years to try to save a few of them so that they're not lost for all time.
Local people, a lot of our Hawaiian people are now coming back to the Aina. And I hope in the future that more would come back. They're losing this land. The reason they lose the land is because they moved away, they did not pay the tax, and a smart aleck guy come along and in the back of your back, he's paying the tax, you know? The Hawaiian people were such a trustworthy people. They trust everybody they see. Even if you had a knife, they trust you. You're not gonna poke me. Soon you back turn, bingo, you had it. But, I hope the future is not this way. I hope the future is that, hey, brother, I can come to your house like today. Hey, and the brother said, brother, my door always open to you, And this is what's happening today. I don't know about someplace else, but in Hana, you walk into one Hawaiian house, you go, my house, no more door. You're a big dog. But no more door. I don't need a door because I get nothing to steal, All what I got is all in here. And this is how I raise my family. And this is how in the future I hope they raise their family.
Well, I think of Hana as a very rural Hawaiian place. And I'd rather live in that type of setting, so I'd like to set my life in that terms. I think everybody who comes to Hana has that in mind when they come to Hana. I think as the other parts of the island build and become more like a city, as Hana can remain as it is, rural and not overdeveloped, I think our value is more increased, and I think that's what we should be looking for.
Hana is probably one of the most Hawaiian places in Hawaii, like Molokai, but Hana, there's a lot of feeling about love of the land. And when we talk about aloha aina, love of the land, it is there. And the native people, not only Hawaiians, but of different ethnic backgrounds, feel very, very much attached to their district. And so while they realize that they need some development out there, they want to be sure that that development does not raise havoc with their lifestyle.
The place is called Hana Hawaiian Village, and we intend to demonstrate, exhibit Hawaiian arts, crafts, and the culture. Our long goals are to establish a living village. Living village is when you're coming in, you're going to be educated toward what some of the crafts were, how they were made, what were they utilized for, and how the changes are taking place and what type of materials that we are, I guess you could say, adjusting to. We want to be able to service the general public, at the same time satisfy our Hawaiian community as far as the quality, as far as the genuineness of the Hawaiian culture.
I plan on living here the rest of my life. This is home for me. And I'm originally from Alabama, and that's home too. But this is where my roots, where my life will continue, I hope. Hope the good Lord sees fit to let me live here.
We won't ever see the old Hana again. Things will only move in one direction, and that's ahead, whatever that is, whatever they mean by saying that you can't stop progress. My honest opinion is that we are going backwards. This is not progress. But how can you stop it with the explosion in the world population? When I was born, there were only 1 billion people on this planet. Today, I noticed where they were celebrated the 5 billionth citizen of planet Earth, 5 billionth.
There are a number of factors that will help to keep Hana pretty much the same over the years. I think the key one among them is the desire of the people that live here to have no change. Hana is special not only to those of us who do live here, but to people elsewhere in Hawaii look at Hana as a very special kind of place, and everybody wants to protect it. I think a combination of enlightened government, tight zoning, enlightened ownership of things like the hotel and the ranch that don't want to make radical changes here, I think Hana has a real fighting chance to stay Hana for quite some time to come.
I'm often asked to describe or define Hana. That's almost impossible to do. Hana is sort of a state of mind. It's an aura. It's a feeling that you get when you get there. Or we use fancy words like the ambience is special and all of this. But there is something to that. I know that I go to Hana a lot. And when I get on that highway and start driving into Hana, as soon as I get to Kenai, I have a different feeling already. I want to slow down. I want to stop. I want to smell the flowers. A lot of flowers to smell. I want to look at all of that beauty. Take my camera out. I'm sort of a camera nut. And I don't know how many pictures I have of Hana. I take the same pictures over and over again, thinking that, well, today there'll be a little different shadow, a little different perspective in the pictures. But it is very special. Then you get out there and you start talking to the people, and I don't know how to put this in words, but I seem to find a genuine character to those people. They're so open, they're so honest, they're so sincere that you feel that there's nobody there that's going to try to take you for a ride. That the people there are truly in love with what they have, and they really want to share that love with everyone who comes. Whether you can participate in that kind of love depends on you. How do you explain paradise? You just can't. You have to go out there and feel it.
Let's go.